So debugging is a very, very important task of programming. The English word debug is a combination of two words, de and bug. This is basically about understanding where the bugs are in your program, or why is your program not working as you expect it to, right? Debugging is an extremely effective tool for you to understand why your program is not working as you expect it to work. And Python has something called PDB, which stands for the P stands for Python and DB stands for debugger. The Python debugger is an interactive debugging environment. It's extremely useful. Unlike other languages, Python has one of the simplest and easiest to use debuggers. Now we'll see how debuggers help us understand logical bugs and how. And let's look at an example so that we understand it better. Here I have a simple program where I have a function called sequence, right? What does the sequence do? It takes a number n as input, and for I equals to range n, which means between 0, 1, 2, so on and so forth, n minus 1, it'll keep printing the values. That's what this function does. So if I say sequence 5, it prints all the numbers from 0 to 4, right? This is what this function does. But let's understand how the control flow occurs. Since this is function definition, this code doesn't run automatically. The function execution starts here. The control flow starts here. Now, as soon as this function is called, it now goes here, right? With n equals to 5. Here, what happens? Your value of n here, because you've given 5 as the input, your n becomes 5, right? And then while you run this loop, the value of I keeps changing because the initial value of I will be 0. The next value of I will be 1, 2, so on and so forth. And all these values will be printed before your return, right? So this for loop keeps running iteratively. And when this for loop runs, the value of I changes. So the value of I changes as this loop executes. And when it becomes equal to n, you exactly come out of it with a return statement, right? Now, the function of a debugger is to help you stop the execution of a program at any point and see what is happening exactly there. So for example, let's assume I want to stop exactly at this point when the function runs, right? So I start here, I go into this function, and whenever I come to this line, I want to stop or I want to break point. So this is also called break point in many languages, right? I want to break point or I want to stop the execution of this function. And at this point, I want to see what is the value of I and n, let's say. So what should be the value of I and n? The first time you come here, the value of I should be 0. Value of n should be 5. The next time you come into this loop, your I should be 1. Your n should be 5. Second time you come into this loop again to the same statement, it should be 2 and 5, etc. so on and so forth. This is what we expect, right? Now, can I stop my program in between and see these values as the loop runs step by step? It's literally having the control of stopping a program while it executes and understanding what's happening to our variables. Now let's see an example of how to do it. This is extremely powerful. Okay, to do that, you have to import PDB. PDB is this module which has all of the key functions that you need for debugging. Now, if you look at it, between the previous program and this program, there are a few changes. This is a new line, right? I have added this new line called pdb.setTrace. This can be thought of as setting a trace point or setting a break point here. So what happens is whenever your program, so what happens in this program, your program starts here. First it imports the thing, then it starts here. When it starts here, it comes in here. Once it goes into this for loop, what is the value of n? N is 5. What is the first value of I? I is 0. So what happens when you come first time here? The first time this function is executed, the PDB, the Python debugger, stops the execution and gives you the control to interactively query things. So here I can ask, what is the value of I? I can ask, what is the value of n? Right? I can ask these questions. And when I'm satisfied, I can say, continue running the program here. And when it continues running the program, it runs this line, it prints the value. And in the for loop, it again goes back here, right? Next time when it comes here, again, it stops. It stops the execution of the program. At this line, wherever I set this pdb.setTrace, it stops the execution of the program there, gives me control so that I can understand interactively what's happening. Let's see this in execution, okay? I've already executed this program. You can see this from the fact that it's already running here, right? So when I run this program, I get this, right? It stopped here, right? Now if I just say list and enter, okay, list tells me where am I exactly right now. So when so these are all called PDB commands, right? So I get a line like this PDB, and I can type whatever I want. I typed list here, right? If you notice, I typed list here. What it tells me is, first I want to understand where am I, because I can set multiple breakpoints, right, in a function. So what it says is you are right here. You are exactly at this point in your function execution. This is where you are. Now I want to understand what is the value of, I. So P basically here stands for print. I want to print the value of I. It says the value of I is 0. What is the value of n? It is 5. Right? So the keyword, so here that's what I've listed here, right? Your list basically here tells you where you are in the program. P is the shorthand for print. Now, if I want all the local variables that are there, right? What are all the local variables here? In my function here, at this point where the execution has stopped, my local variables are I and n. If I want to print all the local variables that are available here, what can I do? I can simply say print locals or p locals. When I say p locals and enter, it tells me that the value of I right now is 0 and the value of n is 5. That's what the program should look like, right? Because it's the first time. So what happened? You imported and then you went to sequence of 5. It went in here, right? What is the first value of I? First value of I should be 0, right? Because it's range n. What does range n mean? You have values from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So first time it comes to this line, in my PDB, when I say print locals, it prints I equals to 0 and n equals to 5, which is what we expect, right? Okay, everything looks good. Now if I want to continue running, so I can just use the command C. What C does is it continues the execution. It stopped the execution here, right? It literally stopped the execution here, wherever I said pdb.setTrace. Now, if I say continue, it will continue executing till the time it again comes back to this line. So it continues the execution till the time it comes back to the pdb.setTrace line. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so now when I say C and enter, okay, so it has continued. Now if I say list again, so that I understand where am I now. Okay, I'm back to this line, and now if I say p locals, what should be the value of I and n now? In the second iteration, your I should be 1 and n should be 5. Let's check if that's true. Let's just check if that's true, right? When I print this, I get I equals to 1 and n equals to 5, because this is second iteration, right? Right? Because what's happening where is this line? This line here. Now I'm at the second iteration. I can stop it anywhere. Oftentimes we set multiple breakpoints like this in a program to understand what exactly is happening at various locations. Especially for mathematical programs, debuggers are heaven sent. They're super useful. Now let's again continue. When I continue, okay, it's continuing again. Now if I say p locals, what happens now? Sorry, if I say p locals, what happens now? In the next iteration, I get I equals to 2 and n equals to 5. I can continue again, and now when I say p locals, I get I equals to 3 and equals to 5. This is how we expect it to work, right? So there is a command called H. H gives you all the functions you can use here, all the debugger functions that you have, right? See, for example, we used p here. We used p here, right? There are functions like next, which will help you run the next line. There are functions like step, etc. There are multiple functions here. There is continue, C, that we used, right? C stands for continue. You can also write the full word continue, or you can say print itself. Some people prefer, instead of saying print, they just say the whole word print, which is perfectly all right. Now the question is, while this program is executing, suppose you want to leave in between. Right now, what is our values? Let's print locals so that we know where we are right now. We are at I equals to 3 and n equals to 5. The loop goes from I equals to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we reach till here in the loop. This is not yet done. But I am like, okay, I understood what is happening. I want to quit now. How do you quit? You just say Q. You simply say Q, and you can quit the whole program. You can quit the debugger, sorry, not the program, right? If I say Q, it simply gives me an error, but I come out of the loop, right? And this program has finished execution, right? This is a very, very important toolkit. Again, typically my favorite functions that I use are p locals. I use continue a lot. I use help whenever I don't know a function, right? I use list a lot to understand where have I stopped right now. Similarly, you have p globals, which prints all the global variables. Having said this, there are other commands like where tells you where you are exactly. Down, continue, quit. All these are useful commands. Again, as I told you, there are many commands here. So when we typed H, we got this big list of commands, right? Sometimes you might have to use some of these. So the documentation for them is very, very easily available. You can just Google up. You can say PDB Python debugger, and if you say next, you'll get interesting documentation on what next does. So there are a lot of these commands. Of course, different people prefer to use different functions. My favorites have been these, but of course, the same thing can be achieved with multiple ways. Suppose you don't want to set too many breakpoints, and you want to set a breakpoint and continue line by line execution. You want to see it through. So that's where your functions like, your commands like next will help you a lot. Now, having said this, see, we have done all of this in our IPython notebook. We can do the same thing in a terminal or a command prompt, right? I'll show you how to do this. So command prompt is what you have in Windows, and terminal is what you have in your Linux or Mac boxes. Okay. Since I have a Mac, I'll show you how this can be used. Right? I'm on my Mac. I'm on the Mac terminal right now, and let me show you So Vim is basically a text editor in Linux and Macintosh systems, right? So this is my program. This is exactly like my program, right? This is what we saw, right? We have a function called sequence. So let me just explain you this. This is exactly like what we saw, right? We have a function called sequence, and I've set my breakpoint here. This is exactly the same thing that we saw, but it is written in a Python in a .py file, unlike the last time. Okay. So now let's see. So this is my Python file, right? So I can get out of this file, right? So I've written all of my commands in python_debug.py, right? Now what I can do here is I can just run it. I can say python_debug.py. Because my code has the Python debug statement like this. Because my code has let me just go up. Because my code has this line, the set trace line, right? It stops at that line. Now I have the same thing. What I have done here, what I have done in my IPython notebook, all the same commands will work. I typed H and I got help, right? Now I can type pi, it will print I, or p locals. Okay, so I can say continue, right? And I can say p locals again. Okay, I can again say continue, and I can say p locals. So what you have done in your IPython notebook can be done in the command line also. Okay, if you want to exit, you can just say Q. You have exited, right? Very simple. So there are two ways of doing it. Some people prefer to do it in command line, like people like me who have been programming on command line for years. Like my favorite way to code used to be on Vim. Vim is a Unix based editor. It's a very, very old school thing, but very beautiful editor, very powerful. For those of us who have used Unix and Linux and Macintosh systems a lot. Okay, having said that, the same thing today could be achieved in IPython notebooks. Okay, so I don't have a specific preference. Earlier, a few years ago, I used to use the Python, the PDB in command line. Today, most often times I just use it in IPython notebooks, especially for machine learning applications. So I hope you enjoy debugging your programs and understanding where things are failing. So if you want to understand where your code is not working as expected, PDB is a tool to use, and setTrace sets breakpoints to help us stop wherever you want. This will help us stop wherever you want in a function and helps you debug your programs very efficiently. And by the way, I've seen many other debuggers. I've seen Java debuggers, C debuggers, C++ debuggers. Python debugger is one of the easiest to use and one of the most interactive debuggers that I have personally come across.